straw that you see flying out, you wouldn't throw that away. All of that will be gathered up and used to stuff your pillows and your mattresses. Every part of the flax plant is going to be used. Now, when we have the straw broken, we still have little bits of straw clinging here and there, you see, that we need to get rid of. So now, if you folks want to move in a little closer, they always complain because I make too much noise, you know, and I tell them, well, the folks here are hard of hearing, that's why I have to do that. So we'll go now to the scutching board and take the scutching knife because it's time to... Well, somebody's awake at any rate. Of course we're going to scutch. Now, scutch is an old word that means to scratch or to scrape. And that's what we do, is we scratch and we scrape out all of those little bits of straw. Now, I'm sure you've heard of quilting bees and husking bees. Of course we had scutching bees. When you invite in your neighbors, your relatives, your friends, even people you didn't like very much. Because the more hands you have, the faster the work is going to be done. But I do have to give you a warning. If you're ever invited to a scutching bee, you must attend. The folks who do not go to the scutching bee are the ones we talk about while we're there, you see. I mean, these folks get together, it's better to be on the giving end than the receiving end, don't you know? Well, once we have the straw scutched, and I won't get all of it here, you see. We'll have our fibers free of the straw, but they're still sort of glued together the same way they were in the plant. We need to separate them all. So to do that, we'll take the flax hackle, or the flax heckle as it's called. Now, you probably know the expression that if a dog becomes angry, the fur on his back stands up. And you say, he raises his hackles. And you say that because his fur looks like the hackles that are used to prepare the flax, you see. Now you notice I have two sets, a coarse set and a finer set. I have as many as 6 of these, becoming finer and finer to make my very best linen thread, you see. So we'll start with the coarse set. Of course we will. And we'll lay the scutch flax across, and we'll be, oh, my wind's changed position here. Sorry, don't mean to turn my back to you, but I have to keep the wind behind me here. There we go. And we'll comb out the tangled, knotted, snarled bits, any little bits of straw that might remain, you see. And then we move to the finer set where we separate those fibers more and more. And as I say, from a very fine linen thread for ladies' caps and kerchiefs, we'll go through as many as 6 of these. And when the flax has been hackled enough, it'll look just like hair. And you probably have heard the poems, stories, and songs about the Flaxen-Haired Maiden. That's why she's called the Flaxen-Haired Maiden, because her hair is the color, the fineness, and the beauty of the flax. And that's what we're going to use to make into linen thread. But before we do that, let's go back to the hackles for a moment. I said nothing goes to waste. Now this material left in the hackles is called tow, spelled T-O-W. This is the reason young blonde children are called tow heads, because their hair is the color of the tow fiber that remains in the processing of the flax. Now we're going to take this tow and we're going to twist it into a very heavy cord, which is also called tow. So on the farm, if I need to move something, I'll attach my tow to that thing and then I'm going to tow it. Of course I am. You think the tow is a verb. No, it's not. Tow is a noun. You just do things with your tow, you see. So your modern tow truck has no relationship at all to what the word actually means. Don't bother telling that to the man who comes to pull you out of the ditch because he's not interested at all, I'll tell you that much. Well, we're going to take these fine fibers, we're going to go now to the spinning wheel where we're going to turn them into linen thread. Oh, you don't have to back up, it's not plugged in, it's not dangerous. Now, in any spinning device, the wheel itself is simply a motor. Yeah, if you move right up, you can see nicely there and we won't block the driveway. Now, in any spinning device, as I said, the wheel itself is just a motor. This is not the thread that I'm making. This is like the chain to your bicycle. This is the working mechanism up here. And if you look, it's nothing more than a spool with a U-shaped or wishbone-shaped piece called the flyer that has a number of hooks. Now, those hooks are used to just spread the thread back and forth across the bobbin, you see. Now, since the thread is attached to the bobbin, crosses the hooks, and then comes to my hand, it means if I hold on to this, and the other end is attached there, every time this goes around once, it will put one twist in my thread. All right? The same as if I were to just roll it in my fingers, just like so. So we'll take the flax we prepared, we wrap it around this wooden rod called the distaff. Now, if you do genealogy work, the study of your family, you'll know that your mother's side of the family is called the distaff side because of the woman's close association to the distaff in spinning. Because all women knew how to spin. Only the most intelligent of men could do that. I have water here I'm going to put on my thread to make it nice and smooth. If I were spinning, some people are awake, if I were spinning thread for feed bags or floor mats, I wouldn't bother with the water because it wouldn't match if the resulting cloth were rather like burlap. But since burlap underwear is not very comfortable, it's not even comfortable to think about, you know. We'll use a lot of water when we're spinning thread for clothing. So I'm going to start the motor now. I keep the motor going with my foot. This is twisting into thread. When that's twisted enough, it's allowed to wind on. My left hand pulls down some more, I'm going to get that wet. It's going to twist into thread and it's going to wind on. My left hand's going to pull down some more, and that's all I do. It's not difficult to do, you know, it just takes a little bit of practice. Now, for the young folks here, can you show us who you come here to the fair with? Who used a spinning wheel like this one? A funny little man, and he had a big long name.
Rumpelstiltskin.
Well, it's not looking good, Mom and Dad, Grandpa and Grandma. It's not looking good at all. Starts with an R. Rumpelstiltskin, of course it was. Now, what is it that Rumpelstiltskin did? I'll see if you got to chapter 2 yet. Rumpelstiltskin spun straw into gold, he did. Well, I'm really sorry you folks weren't here about 10 minutes ago, because I gave a demonstration of how to do that. Well, in these difficult economic times, that'd be a handy skill to know. I'll tell you what, if I can collect a few pieces of silver, I could show you right now how we spin straw into gold. See, I could do that right now, right here, but I guess that's not going to happen, is it? Actually, that story of Rumpelstiltskin is what we call a moral fable, which was used to teach young girls the terrible things that might happen to them if they couldn't do a simple household task like spinning. Because you see, if a girl couldn't spin, her family had no clothes. Because first you have to make the thread before you can make the cloth. Well, once the thread is spun, then we have to take it off of the spinning wheel and we have to measure it at the same time. And to do that, we're going to use the click reel or the clock reel just here. Let me tie this up first. Folks walking by, you know, they like to give the wheel a little spin, and I'll tell them now that's not the wheel of fortune, you know. At least it certainly hasn't made my fortune. I don't think it'll be any different for them, you see. Here at the click reel or the clock reel that we have just here, inside this wooden box there are 3 gears. 2 of them are called cog gears. They're like old-fashioned clock gears. You know, a circle with teeth around the outside. The 3rd one is called a weasel gear, and it's like a large wooden screw turned on each side. Now, when the reel turns, it turns the top gear, which turns the weasel gear, which turns the bottom gear, which turns this little metal hand right there. Can you see that on the fingertip? Sort of like the hand of a clock, you see. That's why this is the clock reel just there. All right, can you see that, sir? All right, I want to be sure. I don't want to leave you out here part way along, you know. All right, now, you notice too that this arm is smooth on the end, and the others all have a lip or a flange. That's my starting point right there. So let me turn this around now to the working side. I always end up on the working side of these things. I don't know how that always happens, but it does every time. Now, we're going to pretend for just a little bit that this is some thread that I've already spun on my wheel, you know, and we're going to wind it onto the reel. Now, I fasten it to the smooth one, and then I wind the thread on by turning the reel, you see. Now I've gone once around, I have a little over 2 yards of thread, but I need, begging your pardon, it's not consumption, don't worry. But I need 300 yards to make my measurement called a lee, or skein of linen. So I have to turn this 140 times in order to get my 300 yards. Now, for some of you folks, that's going to be a bit of a problem. How many times have I gone around so far? Yeah, you're not paying any attention at all, are you? 12. But you don't really have to count. Now, you remember that little metal hand. 140 turns of the reel, and that little metal hand goes all the way around once. So around 139, the gears will push aside this flexible piece of wood here at the bottom, you see. At 140, it will release it, and pop goes the weasel. All around the mulberry bush, the monkeys chased the weasel gear. The monkey thought it was all in fun. Pop goes the weasel. I have 300 yards of thread. I'm ready now to go to the loom, where I'm going to turn it into linen cloth. So if you care to see the cloth making, just step right in. I'd appreciate it if you come around here through the middle instead of through, you can come that way, that's fine. Rather than come through the equipment, put your hands there. Yeah, I don't know whether your loom insurance is paid up for this month, you know, and I don't want any accidents there. All right, this large wooden frame I'm using here, this is called the loom. This particular loom was built in about 1790. Now, you know, there are only 2 kinds of cloth in the world. There's either knitted cloth, like most of your tops and your shirts, very stretchy, or there's woven cloth, like your jeans and all of my clothes, and that's the kind of cloth we make here, you see. Now, in woven cloth, you have 2 sets of threads that make the cloth. One set of threads is stretched from the back of the loom to the front, and these are called the warp thread. The second thread is in this wooden device called the shuttle, which goes back and forth from side to side, which, by the way, is why you ride a shuttle bus back and forth for short distances, you see. Now, this is the woof or the weft thread. Now, it's very important to know the difference between the warp and the weft. So how do you remember which is which? Oh, it's not difficult at all. Because while you're weaving, the weft thread always travels from your right hand to your weft hand, and from your weft hand back to your right hand again. So that's the weft thread, so you can easily remember which is which. Now in weaving, you first decide how much cloth do you want. I want 7 yards. So I measured 400 warp threads 8 yards long, and I wound them around that large roll or beam at the back. Now you can't see most of them because they're covered with the brown paper, but that's where they are. Then they're brought across that back beam and put onto these 4 movable frames called harnesses. Now every harness has a number of these string devices called heddles, and every heddle has an eye in the middle of it. Now if you don't mind, I'm going to show the folks over there the eye of the heddle, and then I'll come back and show the folks on this side. All right? Lovely, thank you kindly. All right, now, here is an Irishman here on this side. There is the eye of the heddle. Can you see that? Look right through there, and I'll bet you. See where my hook is right there? All right. Sort of like, can you see it, miss? Did you see it? All right. Now, I need everybody's help for just a moment. I need you to imagine that there are no threads on the loom at all. You see any threads on the loom?
No.
Well, of course, I just told you there weren't any there. But now we're going to dress the loom or get it ready to use. And to do that, you need a flat metal hook like this one called a threading hook. Now, I'm going to go to the first heddle, and I'm going to pull the first warp thread through the eye of that heddle. Now I'll go to the second heddle, and I'll pull the second warp thread through the eye of that heddle. And I go to the third heddle, and I pull the third warp thread through the eye of that heddle, and I do that 400 times across. But they have to be put onto these 4 frames in the right order via the pattern I want in the front. So you have to remember to thread them in this way. You thread them 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. All right, let's do the second repeat all together now. 4, 1, 4, 1, 4, 1. That's 6 threads down, 394 more to go, and we'll be finished. Good for you. No, you do the same thing over and over, and it doesn't take long to get into your brain. Now, those of you who spend more time in the tavern than you should, I'll write it down for you folks so that tomorrow morning you'll still know what it is you're supposed to be doing, don't you say? Now, once we have those all threaded, then we're going to put them into this comb-like device called the reed, which is here in my swinging beater. So again, I reach through and get the first thread, then the second thread, then the third thread, and I do that 400 times across. But, and this is very important, the first thread here must be the first thread here. The 10th thread here must be the 10th thread here for all 400 threads. If only one thread is out of place, you can't weave. You'll have to find where you made that mistake. You take the threads next to it out and you put them back in again. It's not difficult to do, it's just very exact. A word to the wise among the adults. I wouldn't go to the tavern until these are all threaded up first if I were you. Well, then we're going to fasten these warp threads in the beginning to a wooden stick, pull them so they're nice and taut, and we're finally ready to go to work. Now, I've spent between 12 and 16 hours at the loom so far, but I haven't done any work. To go to work, we're going to fasten these harnesses to the treadles or the pedals at the base of the loom, so that when I step on a treadle, I'm going to raise and lower the harnesses, which raise and lower the heddles, which raise and lower my threads. So you see the importance now of that eye in the heddle. Now, this opening between the 2 layers is called the shed. So we're going to throw the weft thread from right to weft through the shed. Learn the right words, if you please. Leaving a tail behind it, which we're going to press down to make the cloth. Now you see, 1 is down and 2, 3, 4 are up. I'm going to push a different pedal. Now 1 is up and 2, 3, 4 are down. What I've done, the threads that were up are now down, and the threads that were down are now up. They don't look any different. They're all the same color, but that's what's happening. And we beat the thread and throw the thread, and beat the thread and change the shed, and beat the thread. Oh, there we are. You're supposed to be watching that this doesn't happen. I'm going to have to get somebody else to take over if you're not careful.
I'm looking down there.
Well, don't look down there. You need to watch up there, you see. Oh, it's still not on. Well, you are paying attention. All right, then you can keep your job. You can keep your job then. All right. Now, and we throw the thread and beat the thread, and change the shed, and beat the thread, and throw the thread, and beat the thread, change the shed, beat the thread, throw the thread, beat the thread, change the shed, beat the thread, throw the thread, join in anytime you care to do so. Beat the thread, change the shed, beat the thread, throw the thread, and that's how we go about weaving our cloth. Now, if I were to sit and weave without stopping to talk, which never happens at all, I said I was Irish, you know, and we do like to talk a lot, I could weave a yard of cloth in about 20 to 30 minutes. What I'm weaving right now are linen towels. Linen is very good for towels because it soaks up a lot of water. About 20% of its own weight in water before it begins to feel damp, and it leaves no lint on your glassware. as I'm sure you know from your time in the kitchen, sir.
Yeah.
I thought you would. Now you know too that linen, oh, she finds that amusing. Now you know too that linen lasts a long time. You know the Egyptian mummies. Well, not personally, but you know about them. And you know that they were all wrapped in linen much like this. Some of that linen is more than 3,000 years old and you can still use it today. In very hot weather, there's nothing as comfortable as a long sleeve linen shirt. You want long sleeves to keep the sun off your skin, because the sun on your skin is what makes you so hot. Yeah, now don't you feel foolish wearing that on a sunny day like this, you see? Because your long sleeves will soak up the sweat. The air will cause that to evaporate, and evaporation is a cooling process that keeps you nice and comfortable. Also, the more you use and wash and wear linen, the softer and stronger the cloth becomes. Oh, there's nothing as glorious as sleeping on linen bed sheets that are 80 to 100 years old. They're so wonderful soft you think you were sleeping on a cloud of wood. Well now, if linen soaks up water, it lasts